To the violent unrest to matters around mining now, and one expert says a lack of regulation has contributed to the spread of illegal mining. He says the country's artisanal mining policy lacks clarity and there's little support for artisanal miners. According to the Minerals Council, there are about 30,000 illegal miners currently who produce billions worth of gold annually. The illegal activity poses a threat to communities that they operate in, using environmentally unfriendly methods and materials, as you saw with the gas leak last week. Let's unpack this with him. Hulme Scholes joins us in studio. You're a director at Malan Scholes, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Let's speak about that regulation that exists and the lack of clarity that you speak about when it comes to regulation around artisanal mining in South Africa.
The problem is that the artisanal mining policy is simply a policy. It's not yet enforceable law. It's also, unfortunately, albeit it may be well-intentioned, what it tries to do is take inherently unlawful activity and legitimize it by a stroke of the legislator's pen, which actually can't work. What we need to do, we need to confront the illegality first, stop the illegal mining, and stop the syndicated crime that comes with it before we can actually embark on any path to try and increase the mining industry by so-called artisanal mining. Deal with the criminality first, and later, when that's dealt with, try and bring more people into the mining industry.
Yeah, no doubt that's going to be a very difficult thing to do, given how deep-rooted it's become within the illicit mining economy that currently exists in the country. In the meantime, there are risks to communities and miners themselves. Talk us through those.
So the problem is massive, Rafia. It's a huge, huge problem. And the difficulty is that in all these scenarios, in a great number of cases, the illegal miners or zamazamas are victims. They are desperate people. They need employment. They work. They go underground for 70 rand a day. They die. They do not have personal protective equipment, etc. They are victims of criminal syndicates that buy the illegally mined concentrate, to use a gold example, or the illegally mined coal from them. We've got to deal with the syndicated criminality. And as you know, criminality breeds criminality. With the syndicates comes the illegal firearms, in turf wars comes the illegal alcohol. All the evils that follow criminal behavior attach themselves to illegal mining.
Yeah, and I suppose curbing illegal mining or creating enforceable laws, as you mentioned, will also contribute to the responsible and the sustainable development of the sector, won't it?
The sad truth is we don't really need more law.
Yeah.
We just need the current laws to be enforced. We have the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, which makes illegal mining illegal. Yeah. We have the Precious Metals Act, we have the Criminal Procedure Act, we have a whole plethora of legislation that exists. We need it to be enforced by the authorities. So the first stop to stop illegal mining is not the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, it's the South African Police Services. They have to stop the illegality.
Yeah, and I mean, the Minister of Mineral Resources has actually said this a number of times, that the responsibility lays with the SAPs to deal with the criminality so that the appropriate laws can be enforced. The problem here, though, and I don't know if you would have seen this in your experience in the space, is that there are a lot of people or characters who are benefiting from the continued illegality. So the responsibility that government has here to cut it out completely is a difficult one because of the many hands that are in this particular pot.
It's a very, very lucrative pot.
Yeah.
Like all criminality, like the drug trade is very, very lucrative. The illegal mining trade is very, very lucrative. And unfortunately, what we're dealing with in South Africa, at best, is a failing state, and at worst, a failed state. And criminals thrive in that environment. And that is what we are dealing with. We need to clamp down on criminality, including illegal mining, for there to be any significant change.
What role does ministerial consent play when it comes to enforcement and clamping down on this illegality that we're seeing, but also the responsibility of the mining companies that leave these mines that have reached their lifespan, and this is where these zamazamas are operating from?
You see, only from as recent as 1 January 1992 were mining companies obliged to rehabilitate mining operations. But even post that, where mining companies are responsible and they do want to rehabilitate, they are not the military or they are not the police. It becomes very, very difficult for them to police and control illegal mining without the assistance of the South African police services. And unfortunately, I do think it's got to a stage where we're going to have military intervention in some areas. The problem is not going to stop. Mining companies are not tooled up or experienced enough, or they are not the SAPS. They cannot deal with this issue on their own.
Yeah, and I suppose a final thought from you here would be the, I suppose, the licensing and the regulatory framework that exists here going forward. The tightness that's going to need to come into play here as we look to find some form of solution as all the different stakeholders try to do their best to curb what we're currently seeing.
Let's enforce the laws we have. Let's make sure that the syndicates are arrested and jailed, prosecuted and jailed effectively. Let us start a specialised unit of the South African Police Services and the NPA that can deal with the illegal mining. Once we have dealt with illegality, then we can move forward to make legal mining more inclusive for everybody. Until that point, it's not going to work.
Not going to work at all. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Speaking there to Hulme Scholes, who's the director at Malan Scholes, talking to us about the illegal mining that is booming seemingly in South Africa, but the damage that it's causing and the different role players that need to come on board to change the tide.